The Internal Revenue Service threatened the Los Angeles Unified School District with sanctions and penalties for the illegal use of non-voter-approved tax-exempt bonds known as COPs, or Certificates of Participation, which were issued by the district on the still incomplete $330 million Belmont Learning Center. Full Disclosure interviewed the investigators, the legal counsel, and the Director of Planning and Development with the district. And in particular, we asked them about the letters written to the school district by the Internal Revenue Service. 2 letters were highly condemning of the LA school district, and there was one letter which purportedly let them off the hook. Here's what we learned.
The first 2 letters seem to be very strong and indicate that the Internal Revenue Service is going to punish the Los Angeles Unified School District for an illegal use of certificates of participation.
I got a copy of the IRS preliminary determination letter that said that the certificates of participation were not tax exempt because of various serious problems.
Now, there was a second letter that came that said that this was not the case.
No, the second letter
said it wasn't used for what the purposes were.
No, the second letter said that the first letter is still in force and that penalties apply.
No, there was another letter that came
after that. Well, after the first letter, a second letter was sent March 12, 2002 from Jack Ferguson, Internal Revenue Agent. And this letter seemed to be even stronger in that it went through all of the things that LAUSD did wrong.
In addition, the examination findings seem to indicate a deliberate attempt to provide misleading valuations and statements that could be considered in addressing any issue of liability for IRC penalties.
In essence, what that means was that there was an illegal use of the certificates of participation, that they were no longer tax-free bonds because of the fact that more than 10% of the bonds were used to build the retail portion of the project.
The certificates of participation do not finance the retail piece. That has unfortunately been another myth perpetrated in these studies. The retail was always separately financed by private sector sources. There was never any overlap with public funds, and consequently there is no problem. And to this day, the IRS agrees with that position that was taken by the team originally.
I see. So there has been a final determination letter, and that the COPs are tax exempt because of such.
Exactly.
For 1 year, Full Disclosure attempted to obtain a copy of the final tax determination letter from the IRS, the LA Unified School District, and the District Attorney's Office. We even enlisted help from Congress, with Representative Jane Harmon sending letters to the IRS on our behalf. All of this without any results. In response to our many requests, the Internal Revenue Service wrote back saying that the tax status of the tax bonds was confidential, even though the LA Unified School District is a public agency.
Subsequent letter that said that they dropped the whole issue.
Well, you want to know what? We were told that. But as we speak today in this studio, no one, not even the LA Unified School District, can produce a signed document by the IRS that indeed substantiates what you say.
Well,
was hoping
let's
maybe
see
you
if I could say, all I can say, because I'm not aware of where it is. I know I've seen it. I don't have it, but
you've seen it.
Yes, I had seen it.
Was it signed by both the IRS and the LAUSD?
No, I saw the IRS saying that the issue was dropped.
Really? You know, if that was the case, I can't imagine why the LAUSD wouldn't give me a copy of it.
The interesting thing is that if it was the case, what the IRS has said, why hasn't anything happened?
You look at those 2 letters in comparison to the third letter, which is dated October 25th, 2002, and this is again by Derek Knight. It's a complete turnaround, because in these letters, what they're saying is that LAUSD will pay no cash consideration to the IRS under this agreement. This agreement does not require any of the certificates to be redeemed. LAUSD will provide to the IRS a final allocation of proceeds of the certificates, together with any equity contribution. In essence, what this is saying is that they ended up with a slap on the wrist.
We asked Tony Patchett, how can the Los Angeles Unified School District get away with this with the IRS?
I think it goes to show the power of the Los Angeles Unified School District. They're larger than 30 states in their budget. If you look at their accountability in the past, they're accountable to no one. Nobody has ever put brakes on what LAUSD does, nor have they really found fault with them.
Where does the Los Angeles Unified School District get enough power to pressure the Internal Revenue Service?
They hire outstanding law firms to represent them. And when you have outstanding law firms, very powerful, who represent LAUSD, they obviously carry a lot of weight with the Internal Revenue Service.
Full disclosure wondered if big law firms have that much power to influence federal agencies such as the IRS. In a subsequent interview with former U.S. Attorney General Edwin Meese III, we asked him about the power of big law firms on controlling government and government policies.
One thing that has happened, however, in recent years is that rather than individual lawyers, we now have law firms that are made up of almost huge conglomerates. Many times we now have law firms that are literally hundreds of lawyers grouped together. And so it may be that in some cases some law firms have a disproportionate impact on what goes on simply because of their size and therefore their power. And I think that's something that has to be looked at carefully.
We asked Tony Patchett, can big law firms actually buy off the IRS from prosecuting public agencies like the LA Unified School District?
I wouldn't call it being bought off, but I would call it listening to them more intently than if you or I had accidentally committed some tax provision omission. We would not get the same break that LAUSD gets when they make a mistake and they get caught with their hand in the cookie jar.
According to the Los Angeles Times, the LA Unified School District has received $9.5 billion from bond measures in the last 8 years. They still have $5 billion of this in the bank and reportedly have $1 billion in outstanding non-voter approved certificates of participation, COPs, while they are proposing yet another $3.8 billion bond on the November 2005 ballot. Observers think the district wants new bond money to pay off the non-voter approved COPs in order to reduce the annual amount of interest due on these outstanding debts, even though they have the money in the bank to pay them off. We want to hear from you, the viewers. What do you think? Please participate in our survey. Do you think the LA Unified School District should spend taxpayers' money to hire big law firms who can influence the IRS to back off on what they determined was an illegal use of non-voter approved tax-exempt bonds? When asking the voters to approve billions more of bond money, should the ballot language state the money is going to pay off secret bonds issued without voter approval and how they spent the money? And who do you think is accountable for the billions of dollars in taxpayers' funds spent by the LA Unified School District? Based upon the dropout rate and the illiteracy rate among high school graduates, do you think we're getting our money's worth? Please participate in our poll.